Hello everyone and welcome back to another album review. In this video I'm going to review Cheerleader by Cream. At this point I don't really believe there needs to be any introduction about Cream. I've already talked about quite a few of his releases on my channel because he has managed to be pretty consistent over those past couple of years. In terms of some of the latest EPs I've heard out of Cream, I think that we have to do with some of the greatest works he has done in a while in terms of going into this really nasty and brutal power noise directions, which in my opinion does for some of the greatest material that I've heard out of Cream. It makes for the sound that I'm looking forward to the most when it comes to Cream releases, but when it comes to full-length albums, it has been a while since I've really been that much invested into a full-length album out of Cream. But with this brand new Deathbed tapes release over here, we get a pretty short album that's only 8 tracks and goes for about 33 minutes long. It's not like it's a lengthy album, but when it comes to full-length albums, I believe that Cheerleader contains some of the best material that we've heard out of Cream in a while. This is another album that contains the sound that I enjoy out of Cream the most, going into this really furious and aggressive direction of power noise that for me Cream manages to do in a fascinating way. He's definitely one of the best when it comes to this particular sound. Now this though makes for a release that it's quite predictable. I mean, if you are familiar with some of the latest releases from Cream, you don't really get something all that much different here. It's quite a familiar sound that it also doesn't necessarily extend to something that much further. However, I'd still say that when it comes to some of the ideas, it does actually provide some of the best material that I've heard out of Cream. For example, the track Mad Beats is undoubtedly one of the best tracks that I've heard of Cream in general. I love this song. Now right off the bat we start with a really intense track. Like, this is not easy to get into. Even for fans of Cream, you might have a hard time with this one because it contains such loud high frequencies that are ear-piercing. But for me the idea behind this track sounds perfect. I love how punishing this song is. I like the intensity to it, I like the beat, I like the high frequencies, and I like how it all comes together with those filthy distorted vocals. It makes for a great mix of sounds. It's quite minimal, it's straight to the point, and it just sounds awesome. I really like this particular song. With the track RODEO, we get another track that goes into some quite simplistic directions when it comes to the loops, when it comes to the overall melodies, and once again the loud mixing and the powerful distortion really makes for a quite compelling moment over here that showcases for me some of the strongest capabilities when it comes to the sound of Cream. Nixon tries to be somewhat more rhythmic. In my opinion, it doesn't really develop that much as a song, but I still believe that it's a quite okay moment for what it does. And then we get into the track Cheerleader, which is another one of those tracks that I'd say it's some of the best material that I've heard out of Cream. It is a super memorable song that again, love how punishing and torturous it feels with those high frequencies that pierce your ears, and how it's just non-stop madness for 5 minutes straight. I also liked some of the directions that it took with the beat choice, which felt somewhat more refreshing in comparison to other stuff that Cream has done, and once again the vocals sound pretty brutal. There is not necessarily something that much unique for the sound of Cream, but the execution is certainly one of the best. It is a highly memorable and highly addictive song. With the track Hitchhiker is where in my opinion the album kinda shows its predictability. It is a more of a standard song that basically contains elements that we're pretty much familiar with the sound of Cream, and it's not necessarily done in that much of a captivating way. For me, Hitchhiker was a pretty weak song. It is an unnecessarily lengthy song in my opinion. It goes for 6 minutes and it's kinda boring, predictable and one-dimensional. It's kinda nice trying to see it getting tied with some more atmospheric elements attached to it, but for me it has to be the weakest moment out of the entire project. Now we have the track Hot Rod next. Now this track gave me strong Dreamcrasher vibes, and particularly out of the album Incinerator, in which we see Dreamcrasher using some minimal kicks, giving a more of a techno vibe, and it's something that we see with Hot Rod over here. It has a really distorted kick that sounds quite brutal, and I like how it ties it with the rest of the melodic aspects out of it. It's a pretty one-dimensional and monotone song, but I like how it serves as one of the more minimal and also catchiest moments out of this whole project. Candlelight also tries to be somewhat of of a more rhythmic and catchy song, but it doesn't really feel as fleshed out in comparison to Hot Rock. And finally we have the track Henry's Song, which is one of those directions that we see being much more prevalent in the Junko Nagaya projects, where it's basically just a church organ song, which ends up being a quite overplayed sound for Cream at this point. Even though I felt slightly underwhelmed when this track started, I think that it's a bit of a more fitting way to finish the album, I'd say, but it also ended up being quite a memorable song and much better than expected, because I've heard Cream going into these directions many different times and I'm pretty mixed when it comes to songs like this, though the melody on this one ended up feeling quite nice. And not only that, I really like the sudden transition towards the second half where it gets extremely distorted. It gets quite loud, it catches you by surprise, and I feel that it's a pretty fitting finisher. I was actually anticipating for something like this to happen, and so it ended up feeling quite satisfying. So yeah, Henry's Song ended up being a much more fitting finisher than what I expected. So yeah, Grimm, in my opinion, offers actually some of the greatest material that I've heard in his entire catalog. I think that there are some quite exceptional moments over here, but for the most part we're talking about a pretty standard release that if you're already familiar with this sound, it's a quite predictable one. I still though think that it's one of the better releases that Cream has done overall in quite a long time. I'm gonna give Cheerleader a 7+ out of 10. What's your opinion on this album? Like it, dislike it, why, and what do you want me to review next time? Let me know down in the comments. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video, subscribe for more content like this. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video. Goodbye.